The sun was dying over Valora when the Dominion ships came down from the sky. Una stood in the crowd with thousands of others. Her lavender skin pale with fear, her silver eyes fixed on the massive warship that blocked out the light. She was 17 years old. She had no family left. The Dominion had taken her parents 3 years ago for the crime of hiding food from the tax collectors. They had made her watch the execution. Now she stood alone in a sea of bodies, waiting for the High Overseer to pass through their city. Everyone knew the rules. When the Overseer walked, you kneeled. You pressed your forehead to the ground. You did not look up. You did not breathe too loudly. You became nothing. The Dominion had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. They were a coalition of elder races who saw themselves as gods among insects. Humanity was one of the youngest species they had conquered. The humans had been under Dominion control for 300 years now. Most of them had forgotten what freedom felt like. Una watched the procession begin. Soldiers in black armor marched in perfect lines. Their weapons hummed with energy that could turn a body to ash in seconds. Behind them came the priests, chanting in languages that hurt to hear. And behind the priests came the Overseer himself. He was tall and thin, with skin like polished metal and eyes that held no warmth. He walked slowly, enjoying the fear that spread before him like a wave. Everywhere he passed, beings dropped to their knees. The sound was like rain falling, thousands of knees hitting stone. Una felt her legs begin to bend. Her body knew what to do. It had been trained through years of pain and fear. Kneel and survive. That was the only rule that mattered. But then she stopped. She thought of her mother, who had sung songs to her when she was small. She thought of her father, who had taught her the names of stars. They had been good people, kind people, and the Dominion had killed them for keeping a bag of grain. Una straightened her legs. She lifted her chin, and she did not kneel. The crowd around her went silent. People stared at her with horror in their eyes. Some tried to pull her down, but she shook them off. She stood like a single tree in a field of fallen grass. The Overseer stopped walking. His metal face showed no expression, but his eyes found Una in the crowd. A soldier pushed through the kneeling bodies and raised his weapon at her head. "Kneel," the soldier commanded. Una said nothing. She had no words left. She had only this one act of defiance, this small and meaningless rebellion. She knew she would die. She was ready. The soldier's finger moved to the trigger, and then a voice cut through the silence. "Wait." A man stepped out of the crowd. He was human, middle-aged, with a scarred face and tired eyes. He wore the clothes of a freighter captain, dirty and worn. He walked toward Una with his hands raised, showing he carried no weapons. "She belongs to me," the man said. His voice was calm, almost bored. "She's contracted labor, see?" He pulled a small device from his pocket and showed it to the soldier. "Registered under Terran Commerce Code 7749. You can't kill her without compensating me first. And trust me, you can't afford her." The soldier looked confused. He turned to the Overseer for guidance. The Overseer studied the human with something like curiosity. "You claim this defiant creature as your property?" "I claim her as my problem," the man said. "I'll discipline her myself. Save you the trouble." A long moment passed. Una stared at this strange human who had appeared from nowhere. She did not understand what was happening. She had been ready to die. Why was he interfering? The Overseer made a sound that might have been laughter. How amusing. A human protecting an alien. Your species never learns its place. He waved one thin hand. "Take her then? But know this, human. I have marked you both. I will remember your faces." The human nodded. "I'll try to live with the trauma." He grabbed Una's arm and pulled her through the crowd. People parted for them, still too afraid to rise from their knees. The overseer watched them go, and Yuna could feel his eyes on her back like cold knives. The human did not speak until they reached the edge of the city. There, hidden behind old warehouses, sat a small freighter ship. It was ugly and battered, with scorch marks on its hull and patches welded over patches. On its side, someone had painted the name in faded letters, The Stubborn Dawn. A woman appeared at the ship's ramp. She was human too, younger than the man, with sharp eyes and oil stains on her hands. "Doyon, what the hell did you do?" the woman demanded. "I saw the whole thing on the city cameras." "Are you insane?" So the man's name was Doyon. Yuna stored this information away. "Probably," Doyon said. He pushed Yuna toward the ramp. "Get inside. We're leaving before that metal-faced bastard changes his mind." The woman, whose name was Subin, cursed in a language Yuna did not know. But she helped Yuna up the ramp and into the ship. The inside was as ugly as the outside, cramped and cluttered with equipment and cargo boxes. But it was warm, and it smelled like coffee and engine grease. And somehow that made Yuna feel safe. The ship lifted off the ground with a shudder. Through a small window, Yuna watched her planet fall away. She had never been to space before. She had never left the city where she was born. Now she was rising through clouds, through atmosphere, into the black emptiness between stars. Daehyun found her staring out the window an hour later. He leaned against the wall and lit a cigarette, the smoke curling up toward the air filters. "You're stupid," he said. "You know that, right? Standing up to the Dominion like that. They would have killed you in a heartbeat." Yuna turned to face him. "Then why did you save me?" Daehyun took a long drag from his cigarette. He did not answer for a while. When he finally spoke, his voice was quieter than before. "I've been hauling cargo for the Dominion for 20 years. I've watched my people bow and scrape and beg just to survive. I've done it myself, more times than I can count. We all do it. We tell ourselves it's the smart thing, the safe thing." He blew smoke toward the ceiling. "But you know what? I'm tired of being smart. I'm tired of being safe. I saw you standing there, refusing to kneel, and I thought, someone should do something. So you risked your life for a stranger," Yuna said. "For an alien you don't even know." Daehyun shrugged. "Maybe I'm stupid too." Sabin's voice came through the ship's speakers. "We're clear of the planet's gravity well, setting course for the outer rim. And Daehyun? The Dominion has already flagged our ship. We're wanted now." Daehyun finished his cigarette and crushed it under his boot. "Good, I was getting bored anyway." He walked toward the cockpit, leaving Yuna alone with the stars. She pressed her hand against the cold glass of the window and watched the lights of distant suns streak past. She was a fugitive now. She was marked for death. She had lost everything she had ever known. But for the first time in 3 years, she did not feel alone. The Stubborn Dawn flew on, carrying one human and one alien toward an uncertain future. Behind them, on 100 worlds, word was already spreading. A girl had refused to bow. A human had stood beside her. It was a small story, barely worth telling, but small stories have a way of growing. 3 weeks in space changed everything Yuna thought she knew about humans. She had grown up hearing stories about them. The Dominion taught all conquered species that humans were weak, stupid, and barely worth the effort of enslaving. They were good for manual labor and nothing else. They broke easily. They died quickly. They were less than insects in the grand order of the galaxy. But the humans on the Stubborn Dawn were nothing like those stories. Subin was the first to surprise her. The engineer spent most of her time in the belly of the ship, keeping the old engines running with spare parts and stubbornness. She cursed constantly, especially at machines, and her hands were always covered in grease. But when Yuna got lost in the ship's corridors on her second night, Subin found her and walked her back to her small cabin without a single harsh word. "This ship is a maze," Subin said. "Took me a month to learn it when I first came aboard." "You'll figure it out. Why do you help me?" Yuna asked. "I'm not human. I'm not even part of your crew." Subin laughed. It was a rough sound, but not unkind. "Kid, we're all just trying to survive out here. Species doesn't matter. What matters is whether you're an asshole or not. So far, you're not. That puts you ahead of half the galaxy." Dahin was harder to understand. He spent most of his time in the cockpit, plotting courses and taking jobs from contacts on distant stations. He smoked too much and slept too little. Sometimes Yuna caught him staring at nothing. His eyes focused on memories she could not see, but he was patient with her questions. When she asked about Earth, the human homeworld, he told her about blue oceans and green forests in cities that touched the clouds. He had never been there himself. No human had set foot on Earth in 200 years. The Dominion had sealed it off, turned it into a museum of human defeat. "But it's still there," Doyun said. "They can't take that away from us. Every human in the galaxy knows that somewhere out there, our home is waiting." "Waiting for what?" Yuna asked. Doyun smiled, but it was a sad smile. "For us to deserve it again." The ship made stops at smuggler stations, hidden in asteroid fields, and on moons that did not appear on any official maps. Yuna met more humans at each stop. There was Jie, a doctor who ran a secret clinic for escaped slaves. She was calm and gentle, with steady hands and tired eyes. She had seen too much suffering, but she kept working anyway. "Why do you stay here?" Yuna asked her one day, watching Jie bandage a wounded man who had fled from a Dominion mining colony. "You could find a safe place. Hide from all of this." Jia finished her work and wiped blood from her hands. "Because these people need help. And if I don't help them, who will?" There was Taiwan, a giant of a man who rarely spoke. Yuna learned that he had once been a soldier in the Dominion's human conscript forces. He had fought for their masters, killed for them, done terrible things in their name. Then one day he had turned his weapon on his commanders and fled into the darkness of space. He trained the younger rebels in combat, teaching them how to fight against enemies who were faster and stronger than them. Yuna watched from a distance as he showed a group of teenagers how to move, how to strike, how to survive. "He feels guilty," Subin told her, "for what he did before. He thinks if he saves enough people now, it might make up for it. Does it?" Yuna asked. Subin shook her head. "I don't know. But he keeps trying." The most important thing Yuna learned was this. Humans laughed. They laughed at danger, at death, at the Dominion itself. They made jokes in the darkest moments. They found humor in their suffering. It was something Yuna had never seen in any other species. This ability to smile when everything was falling apart. One night, Do-yoon gathered the crew in the small common room. He had received a message from someone called the Council of Ash. They were the leaders of the human resistance. Shadows who coordinated the fight against the Dominion from hidden places across the galaxy. "Word is spreading," Do-yoon said. "About what happened on Valora. About Yuna." Everyone turned to look at her. Yuna felt heat rise to her face. "What do you mean?" she asked. Subin pulled up a holographic display. It showed messages from dozens of worlds, all telling the same story in different ways. A Valorian girl had refused to bow before the Dominion. A human had saved her. They had escaped together. The story was growing with each telling, becoming larger than the truth. "You've become a symbol," Jihei said softly. "People are talking about you like you're some kind of hero." "I'm not a hero," Yuna said. "I was just tired of being afraid." "That's exactly what makes you a hero," Taiwan said. It was the first time she had heard him speak more than 2 words. Do-yoon lit another cigarette. There's more. The Dominion has assigned a special hunter to find us. His name is Valeth. He's the overseer who let us go on Valora. He let us go so he could track us, Subin realized. Son of a bitch. He's obsessed with understanding why the story is spreading so fast, Do-Yun continued. He thinks if he captures us, he can stop the fire before it grows. Yuna felt cold fear in her stomach. She had seen Veleth's eyes. There was no mercy in them, no warmth. He would hunt them across the galaxy without rest. What do we do? She asked. Do-Yun smiled, and for the first time, it reached his eyes. We give him something to chase. The Council wants us to make contact with resistance cells on other worlds. Spread hope. Spread the story. Make the Dominion fear us. That sounds dangerous, Yuna said. It is, Subin agreed. We could all die. Silence filled the room. Then Taiwan laughed, a deep rumbling sound. One by one, the others joined him. Even Ga smiled. Even Do-Yun. Yuna did not understand. What's funny about dying? Do-Yun walked over and put his hand on her shoulder. Nothing. But if we're going to die anyway, we might as well make it mean something. That's the human way. We laugh because if we don't, we'll cry. And crying doesn't scare the Dominion. That night, after the others had gone to their cabins, Do-Yun found Yuna in the common room. He was carrying something old and battered, a device she did not recognize. Do you know what this is? He asked. Yuna shook her head. It's called a music player. Ancient human technology. This one belonged to my grandmother. He pressed a button and sound filled the room. It was strange sound. Voices and instruments blended together in patterns that rose and fell like waves. The words were in an old human language Yuna did not understand. But the feeling behind them was clear. Longing, hope, defiance. What is this? Yuna whispered. This is what we were, Do-Yun said. Before the Dominion. This is what we're fighting to become again. Yuna closed her eyes and listened. The music wrapped around her like a warm blanket. She did not understand humans. She probably never would. But in that moment, she loved them. The stubborn dawn flew on through the darkness, carrying its cargo of rebels and dreamers. Somewhere behind them, Valeth was watching, waiting, planning. The hunt had begun, but for now, there was music. And for now, that was enough. The attack came without warning. They were docked at a small station called Nexus 7, taking on supplies and meeting with a resistance contact. Yuna was in the cargo hold, helping Subin load food containers when the first explosion shook the ship. Alarms screamed. Red lights flashed. Through the cargo hold's small window, Yuna saw Dominion warships dropping out of hyperspace, their weapons already firing. Valeth found us, Subin said. Her voice was calm, but her hand shook as she grabbed her weapon. We need to go, now. They ran through the ship toward the cockpit. The station was falling apart around them, pieces of metal flying through space, bodies floating in the void. The Dominion was not taking prisoners today. Do-Hyun was at the controls, his fingers flying over the panels. Subin, I need engines now. We're leaving? What about Ga and Taiwan? Yuna asked. They're still on the station. I know. Do-Hyun's jaw was tight. I'm trying to reach them on communications. No response. The ship lurched as Subin forced the engines to life. The stubborn dawn pulled away from the dying station, just as a Dominion cruiser's beam cut through where they had been docked seconds before. Yuna watched through the window as Nexus 7 broke apart. Somewhere in that wreckage, Ga and Taiwan were fighting or dying or already dead. She wanted to scream, to demand that they go back. But she knew it was impossible. Then a voice crackled through the communication system. It was Taiwan. Do-Yun, we're pinned down. Cargo Section 3. GA is hurt. We're coming, Do-Yun said immediately. No. Taiwan's voice was firm. Too many of them. You fly. We'll find another way. Taiwan. This is not a discussion, Captain. Keep the girl safe. Keep the story alive. That's what matters now. The communication went dead. Subin flew the ship through a storm of weapons fire, spinning and diving between falling debris. She was cursing nonstop, a steady stream of words that Yuna did not understand. Behind them, a small escape pod launched from the station's wreckage. Yuna saw it for just a moment before the Dominion guns found it. The pod exploded in a flash of light. No. Yuna whispered. The stubborn Dawn jumped to hyperspace. The stars stretched into lines, and then there was only the blue glow of faster-than-light travel. Silence filled the cockpit. Do-Yun sat very still. His hands were still on the controls, but he was not moving. Subin stared straight ahead, her jaw clenched so tight it looked painful. They're gone, Subin said finally. Taiwan, GA, all of them. Do-Yun said nothing. Yuna felt tears running down her face. She had only known these people for a few weeks, but they had been kind to her. They had treated her like family. Now they were dead because of her. Because the Dominion was hunting her. This is my fault, she said. Don't. Do-Hyun's voice was sharp. Don't you dare say that. They knew the risks. They chose to fight. That's not on you. But Valeth is hunting us because of me. Because I didn't bow. If you had just bowed, you would be dead or enslaved, and nothing would be different. Do-Yun finally turned to look at her. His eyes were red, but there were no tears. The Dominion kills people every day. They killed my parents. They killed Sabin's brother. They killed Jihee's entire family. This war started long before you refused to kneel, Yuna. You just reminded us why we're fighting. They traveled in silence for 2 days. The ship felt empty, without Taiwan's heavy footsteps and Jihee's quiet humming. Yuna spent most of her time in her cabin, staring at the wall and trying not to think. On the 3rd day, Subin called her to the common room. There was a new face on the holographic display. A young human girl, maybe 15 years old, with short dark hair and angry eyes. Her name was Mireille, and she was a hacker who had been working with the Resistance. I heard what happened at Nexus 7, Mireille said. I'm sorry about your friends. Did you know them? Yuna asked. GA patched me up once after the Dominion killed my family. Mireille's voice was flat, controlled. She saved my life. Now she's dead because of those bastards. Do-Hyun leaned forward. Why are you contacting us, Mireille? Because I found something. Mireille's fingers moved, and the display changed to show a map of a prison complex. Kethville. Maximum security. The Dominion is holding captured Resistance fighters there. Including. She hesitated. Including Captain Do-Hyun. Everyone stared at her. What are you talking about? Subin demanded. Do-Hyun is right here. Not anymore, he won't be. Marie's face was grim. The Dominion is planning a trap. They're going to ambush your ship in 2 hours at the Huron corridor. Valeth is commanding the operation personally. His orders are to capture Do-Hyun alive and kill everyone else. How do you know this? Do-Hyun asked. I cracked their communications network. It's what I do. Mireille's eyes met his through the display. You can change course and avoid the trap. But if they catch you, they're going to take you to Kethville and torture you until you give up everything you know about the Resistance. Do-Hyun was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. Change course, Subin. We'll go around. But later that night, Yuna found him alone in the cockpit, studying the map of Kethvar that Mireille had sent. You're not going to run, are you? She asked. Do-Hyun did not look away from the map. The people in that prison. Some of them have been there for years. The resistance has never had enough strength to break them out. But if we knew the layout, the guard rotations, the security systems, you want to get captured on purpose. I want to gather information. He finally turned to face her. If I can survive long enough, I might be able to help plan a real rescue. Save hundreds of people. Or you could die, Yuna said. They'll torture you, Do-hyun. Valeth wants to break you. Maybe. Do-hyun smiled, but it was a tired smile. But I've been broken before. I got back up. That's what humans do. Yuna wanted to argue. She wanted to tell him he was being stupid, that his life was worth more than information, that she could not lose another person. But she saw the decision in his eyes. He had already made up his mind. Then I'm coming with you, she said, double quotes. No, absolutely not. You don't give me orders. I'm not part of your crew. Yuna, you saved my life when you didn't have to. You gave me a home when I had nothing. If you think I'm going to let you walk into a trap alone, you're wrong. She lifted her chin, the same way she had when she refused to bow on Valora. Someone should stand beside you. And I'm someone. Do-hyun stared at her. For a moment, she thought he would keep arguing. Then he laughed, a genuine laugh that seemed to surprise even him. You know what? You're right. Let's go be stupid together. The stubborn Dawn changed course, flying straight toward the trap that waited for them. Behind them, Myra was already reaching out to other resistance cells, spreading the word. A rescue mission was being planned. Fighters were being gathered. The fire that Yuna had started was still burning, and it was about to burn brighter. The plan worked, but not in the way anyone expected. Do-hyun had surrendered himself at the Huron corridor, giving Subin and Yuna time to escape in an emergency pod. He had smiled as the Dominion soldiers dragged him away, and Yuna had screamed his name until her throat was raw. That was 3 months ago. Now, Yuna stood on the bridge of a rebel warship called the Silent Thunder, watching a fleet of human vessels gather in the darkness between stars. There were 47 ships in total, most of them old freighters and mining vessels that had been converted into weapons of war. They were small and battered compared to the Dominion's gleaming warships. But they were here. Admiral Jeong stood beside her, studying the tactical display. She was a legend among humans, a military commander who had disappeared 20 years ago after a failed uprising. Everyone had thought she was dead, but she had been hiding, building, waiting for the right moment. The moment is now, Jeong said, as if reading Yuna's thoughts. Thanks to the information Do-hyun sent us before they caught him, we know the layout of HFY inside and out. We know their patrol schedules. We know their weaknesses. Is he still alive? Yuna asked. It was the question she asked every day. Our spies say yes. They've been interrogating him for months. He hasn't broken. Jeong's voice held respect. That man is stronger than the Dominion understands. Yuna had changed in the past 3 months. She had trained with rebel fighters, learning to shoot and fight and survive. She had traveled to a dozen worlds, spreading hope and gathering recruits. Everywhere she went, people recognized her. The girl who didn't bow. The alien who stood with humans, she hated the attention. She was not a hero. She was just someone who had been too tired to kneel. But the story had grown beyond her control, becoming something larger than herself. Subin approached them, her face serious. We just received word from the surface of Thesson Prime. The slave uprising there has succeeded. They've taken control of the food production facilities. This was the plan they had been working toward. Not a single attack, but a wave of rebellions across Dominion space. While the enemy was distracted by chaos on 100 worlds, the main fleet would strike HFY and free the prisoners. What about Valeth? Yuna asked. Still at HFY, personally overseeing Do-hyun's interrogation. Jiang's smile was cold. He's so focused on breaking one human that he doesn't see the fire burning around him. My Ray appeared on a holographic display, her young face bright with excitement. I'm in their systems. When you give the word, I can shut down their defense grid for exactly 7 minutes. That's your window. 7 minutes to breach a maximum security prison? Subin muttered. No pressure. Yuna looked around the bridge at the humans preparing for battle. They were scared. She could see it in their eyes, in the way they gripped their weapons too tightly. But they were here anyway. They were fighting anyway. Why do you do this? She asked Jiang. You could have stayed hidden. Stayed safe. Why risk everything now? Jiang was quiet for a moment. Then she pointed at the tactical display, at the small blue dots representing the rebel fleet. Each of those ships is crewed by humans who remember the stories their grandparents told them. Stories about Earth, about freedom, about what we used to be. For 300 years, the Dominion has tried to make us forget. They've beaten us, enslaved us, murdered us by the millions. And still we remember. She turned to face Yuna directly. You asked why we fight. We fight because the alternative is to become what they say we are. Weak, broken, nothing. And we refuse. We will always refuse. That's the human way. The fleet jumped to hyperspace. For hours, they traveled through the blue void, getting closer to HFY and the battle that waited for them. Yuna spent the time preparing her weapon and trying not to think about everything that could go wrong. When they dropped out of hyperspace, chaos erupted immediately. The Dominion fleet guarding HFY was larger than expected. Massive warships turned their weapons toward the rebel fleet, and the void filled with deadly light. Ships exploded. People died. But the rebels kept coming, pushing forward through the storm of fire. Defense grid is down, Myre shouted through the communications. 7 minutes starting now. 3 assault shuttles broke away from the main fleet and dove toward the prison complex on the planet below. Yuna was on one of them, along with Subin and a team of the best fighters the rebellion had. The landing was rough. They hit the prison's outer wall at full speed, using the shuttle itself as a battering ram. Metal screamed. Alarms howled. And then they were inside, running through corridors filled with smoke and enemy soldiers. Subin moved like a dancer, her weapons finding targets with deadly precision. The other fighters formed a protective circle around Yuna, following the map that Do-hyun had memorized and transmitted during his weeks of captivity. This way. Yuna shouted, recognizing a corridor from the plans. They fought through level after level, leaving a trail of unconscious and dead guards behind them. The prison was a maze of cells and torture chambers, filled with the screams of the suffering. Yuna wanted to free everyone, but there was no time. They had one target. They found Do-hyun in the deepest level, chained to a metal table in a room that smelled like blood. His face was swollen and bruised. His body was covered in wounds. But when he saw Yuna, he smiled. Took you long enough, he whispered. Subin cut his chains while Yuna covered the door. Can you walk? I can crawl if I have to. Do-hyun's voice was weak, but determined. What's our exit? There isn't one yet, Yuna admitted. We're making it up as we go. Do-hyun laughed, then winced in pain. That's the human way. They carried him out of the torture chamber and into the corridor. The other prisoners they passed reached through their bars, begging for help. Subin made a decision. Open all the cells, she ordered one of the fighters. Everyone who can move, tell them to follow us. Within minutes, they had an army. Hundreds of prisoners, weak and wounded, but burning with rage, followed them through the prison. Some picked up weapons from fallen guards. Others simply used their fists. The Dominion had broken their bodies, but not their spirits. They burst out onto the prison's landing platform just as the 7-minute window closed. The defense grid came back online, but it was too late. Rebel ships were already landing, taking on passengers, filling their holds with the freed. Velith's voice echoed across the platform through loudspeakers. "You think this changes anything? We will rebuild. We will hunt you down. The Dominion is eternal." Yuna looked up and saw him standing on a balcony above them, his metal face twisted with fury. For a moment their eyes met. "You're wrong," she said, even though he couldn't hear her. "Nothing is eternal. Especially not you." The last shuttle lifted off. Behind them, HFY was burning, and across the galaxy, other fires were burning too. Slave revolts on Thesan Prime and a dozen other worlds. Attacks on Dominion supply lines. Uprisings in places that had been silent for generations. The stars were igniting with rebellion, and this was only the beginning. The final battle came 6 months after the fall of HFY. Velith had not wasted time mourning his defeats. He had gathered the largest Dominion fleet ever assembled, 5,000 warships crewed by soldiers who had conquered galaxies. His mission was simple: destroy Earth, burn the human homeworld to ash, end the rebellion by killing the dream that sustained it. But the humans had been preparing too. The rebel fleet had grown to 300 ships. Other species had joined them, races who had suffered under Dominion rule for thousands of years and finally found the courage to resist. The Valorians sent what remained of their hidden warrior class. The people of Thesan Prime contributed food and medical supplies. Even some Dominion soldiers had defected, choosing freedom over tyranny. Yuna stood on the bridge of the Stubborn Dawn, which had been repaired and upgraded into a proper warship. Do-Hyun was at the controls, his body still scarred from his time in prison, but his spirit unbroken. Subin manned the weapons console, her fingers hovering over the firing buttons. The Dominion fleet just dropped out of hyperspace near Earth, Myre reported through the communications. Her voice was steady, but Yuna could hear the fear underneath. "They're not stopping the fight. They're heading straight for the planet." Admiral Jeong's fleet moved to intercept. The void between stars erupted into the largest battle in human history. Ships the size of cities crashed against each other. Weapons that could crack moons tore through metal and flesh. Thousands died in the first minutes alone, and it wasn't enough. The Dominion fleet was too large. For every ship the rebels destroyed, 10 more took its place. Slowly, inevitably, Velith's forces pushed through toward the blue planet that hung in the darkness ahead. "We can't stop them," Subin said. Her voice cracked. "There are too many." Do-Hyun was quiet. He was staring at something on his tactical display, his mind working through calculations that Yuna could not understand. "Maybe we can't stop the fleet," he said finally, "but we can stop Velith." He pulled up a schematic of the Dominion flagship, a massive vessel called the Eternal Throne. It was the command center of the entire fleet. If it fell, the Dominion forces would lose coordination. They might still destroy Earth, but they would be weakened, vulnerable. "That's suicide," Subin said flatly. "Maybe." Do-Hyun turned to face her. "But if we take out Velith, we take out their leadership. The Council of Ash has agents on a dozen Dominion worlds, ready to strike the moment the Overseer falls. The rebellion doesn't end today, Subin. It just begins." Yuna understood what he was proposing. A direct assault on the most heavily defended ship in the Dominion fleet. A one-way mission. "I'm coming with you," she said. Do-Hyun shook his head. "Yuna, don't argue with me." "Not now." She walked over to stand beside him. "You told me once that someone should do something." "Well, I'm someone. And this is something." The Stubborn Dawn broke away from the main fleet and accelerated toward the Eternal Throne. Other rebel ships saw what they were doing and moved to cover their approach. Fighters swarmed around them like protective angels, sacrificing themselves to keep the small freighter alive. They crashed through the flagship's hangar bay at full speed. skidding across the deck and smashing through walls. Yuna was thrown from her seat, but Do-hyun caught her before she could hit the ground. "Let's finish this," he said. They fought their way through the ship, just like they had fought through HFY War. But this time, there were only 3 of them against an army. Subin fell at the 3rd checkpoint, taking a blast meant for Yuna. She pressed her weapon into Yuna's hands before the light left her eyes. "Make it count," Subin whispered. And then she was gone. Do-hyun and Yuna kept moving. They did not have time to mourn. The ship was shaking as the battle outside raged on. They could hear explosions, feel the structure groaning around them. They found Valith in the command center, standing calmly before a massive window that showed Earth burning below. Dominion weapons had already begun bombarding the surface. Forests were becoming ash. Oceans were boiling. "You're too late," Valith said without turning around. "The human homeworld dies today. Your rebellion dies with it." Do-hyun raised his weapon. "Maybe, but so do you." Valith moved faster than Yuna's eyes could follow. One moment he was at the window. The next he was in front of them, his metal hand around Do-hyun's throat. He lifted the human off the ground like he weighed nothing. "You fascinate me," Valith said. "I tortured you for months. I took everything from you. And still you fight. Why?" Do-hyun's face was turning blue. He couldn't breathe, couldn't speak. But he managed to smile. Yuna understood what she had to do. While Valith was focused on Do-hyun, she ran to the main control panel. Myrae had taught her well over the past months. She knew which buttons to press, which codes to enter. The self-destruct sequence began counting down. Valith threw Do-hyun aside and lunged for her. But Do-hyun grabbed his leg, holding on with the last of his strength. "You want to know why we fight?" Do-hyun gasped. "Because you can kill us, but you can't beat us. You can burn our worlds, but you can't burn our spirit. Every time you strike us down, we get back up. That's what you'll never understand." The countdown reached 0. The Eternal Throne exploded. The blast took out a quarter of the Dominion fleet with it. Ships that lost their command structure fell into chaos, crashing into each other, fleeing in all directions. The bombardment of Earth stopped. In the command centers of rebel ships across the galaxy, word spread like fire. Valith was dead. The Dominion was fractured. The rebellion had won its first true victory. On Earth's surface, humans who had lived as ghosts for centuries looked up at the sky and saw the Dominion ships retreating. Some of them wept. Some of them laughed. Some of them simply stood in silence, unable to believe what they were seeing. Freedom. 10 years later, the war was still being fought, but the Dominion was crumbling. World after world declared independence. Species that had been enslaved for millennia joined the rebellion. The old order was dying, and something new was being born. Yuna stood on the surface of Earth for the first time, in a field of grass that had regrown over the scars of bombardment. She was older now, with lines around her silver eyes and white streaks in her dark hair. She carried Do-hyun's lighter in her pocket, the same one he had used to light his cigarettes. She never smoked, but sometimes she flicked it open and watched the flame dance. A young human soldier approached her. He was nervous, barely more than a child. "Commander Yuna? I have a question, if that's okay." Yuna smiled. She still didn't like being called commander, but she had stopped arguing about it years ago. "Go ahead. Why you keep fighting? The war is almost over. You can rest. You've done enough." Yuna looked out at the horizon, where the sun was setting over mountains that had survived the war. Somewhere out there, Do-hyun's ashes were scattered, mixed with the soil of the planet he had never seen in life. "A man saved my life once," she said. "He didn't know me. He had no reason to help me. But he stepped forward because someone should. I spent every day since then trying to be worthy of that gift." She flicked the lighter open, watched the flame, then closed it again. That's why I fight. Because someone should. And I'm someone." The young soldier nodded, not fully understanding, but sensing that he had heard something important. He saluted and walked away. Una stayed in the field until the stars came out. She looked up at the lights in the sky, thinking about all the worlds that were free now, all the people who would never have to kneel. Again, the stars had paid a heavy price for one girl's defiance, but the stars had also learned something. Fire spreads. Hope spreads, and when beings refuse to kneel, empires fall. She walked back toward the city, toward the meetings and the planning and the endless work of building a new galaxy. Behind her, the first stars of evening were glowing bright. The story was not over. Stories like this never really end. They just keep spreading. From person to person, world to world, generation to generation. And every time someone tells the story of the alien girl who refused to bow, the fire burns a little brighter.